Here are the top 3 ways to tell a shoulder strain apart from a rotator cuff tear. The first way is through imaging studies. If you go see a doctor for your shoulder pain, they're going to immediately tell you to get x-rays, possibly an MRI, and maybe even an ultrasound. The first test they'll order will typically be an x-ray, and they'll be looking for problems with the structure and the shape of your bones. They're going to be looking for things like osteoarthritis, which makes the surfaces of the ball and socket joint no longer smooth. They should be smooth, but if they're rough, you're going to have problems that can cause pain. And they'll also be looking for bone spurs, which are overgrowths of bone where you shouldn't have overgrowths of bone. That'll impede your motion in your shoulder and possibly cause pain. And they'll also be looking for things like fractures. It could be a small hairline fracture, or if you had an accident, like you were in a car accident, a cycling accident, then they're going to definitely want to look for fractures as a source of your pain. And another factor that they're going to be looking at on the x-ray is the shape of the acromion. In the ball and socket joint, you have this piece of bone that overhangs. It's not directly touching the ball, but it overhangs like this, and it can start to change shapes and affect pain into the shoulder. Then after that, they'll look at doing an MRI to look at the soft tissues, which is basically everything else except the bone, specifically at the muscles, the tendons, and the cartilage in the shoulders. Of course, you're going to be looking for tears in the tendons of the rotator cuff muscles and any other things that could be causing a problem in your shoulder. Something that they may detect on the MRI could be bursitis, which is related to impingement, shoulder impingement. You may hear this term thrown around if you're going to the doctor for your shoulder problem. And then a third option for imaging is to get an ultrasound study done. Now, this is the same type of technology that's used to look at babies inside of pregnant mothers, but they'll use it to look inside your shoulder joint because they can actually see the tendons. With all of these imaging studies, finding a rotator cuff tear is possible, but realize that there are errors because all of this is compared against the gold standard, which is surgical visualization, which just means that in order to truly accurately diagnose a rotator cuff tear, you have to go inside surgically and look at it. But that's not viable. It's not feasible because of the risks associated with that. So these tests are the next best thing. It's also possible that these tests may not detect a tear, but you may be on the verge of getting a tear. You just caught it too early. And so these tests may come back negative. In other words, they did not find a tear, but you still have severe shoulder pain. You can't pick up your arm. All those symptoms are still there like you had a rotator cuff tear. Which takes me to my next point here. The symptoms can guide you on what kind of injury you have. If it's just a shoulder strain or if it's a rotator cuff tear. A classic sign of a rotator cuff tear, the way that you can be certain that it's torn, unfortunately, and it's a complete tear usually, meaning the tendon is completely torn, not just partially torn. But a classic sign is that when you raise your arm up right about here, right at about 90 degrees with your body, you can't pick it up all the way. You need to help it with the other arm to get it all the way up. Now, some people that have a partial tear will have pain in that area. They'll pick up their arm and then right here, they'll say, ow, that hurts. And then once I get past that, I'm okay. That's more in line with a partial tear, but it's possible to not have a tear at all. And it's just irritated when you're getting into that zone. But something that I see here in the clinic is a consistency between MRI and ultrasound results of a complete tear and the person being able to lift their arm, but only with help from their other arm in order to come up all the way. Now, something important that you need to realize is that shoulder strains and rotator cuff tears are on a continuum. So if a shoulder strain keeps getting worse and worse over time, it could happen fast if you do something that's aggressive. It could lead to a rotator cuff tear immediately, or it could happen gradually if you just don't let it heal. If you don't let that shoulder strain heal over time and it continues to fester and worsen, the tendon will begin to break down and eventually develop a tear. But let's say that you do the right things and you begin to heal your rotator cuff tendon or your shoulder strain. The third way that you can tell if you had a shoulder strain or a rotator cuff tear is after the fact, the healing times. If you felt better, if you did the right things and you recovered from your shoulder injury and you felt better within just 2, at most 3 weeks, then it's more likely that you had a shoulder strain rather than a rotator cuff tear. Because when you tear your rotator cuff tendons, the tendons themselves don't have a good blood supply compared to muscles and other tissues, and so they take longer to heal. They typically take more than 3 weeks. You're looking at more like a month to 2 months to heal. So if it took you that long despite you doing the right things, then it's more likely that you had a rotator cuff tear than a shoulder strain. If you ever look at anatomy books or anatomy pictures on the internet, you'll notice that the muscles are red in color and then the tendons are white in color. And they do that to let you know that the muscle has a good blood supply. Therefore, it heals much faster than the tendon, which is white in color. It doesn't have as good a blood supply. It does have a blood supply and it does heal. It's just at a slower rate than muscles. And of course, the worse the injury, like if you have an actual tear versus it's just irritated as in a shoulder strain, the worse the injury, the longer the time it's going to take to heal. If you're looking for what to do to help your shoulder problem, then I want to invite you to check out our playlist here on YouTube. If you've got a rotator cuff tear specifically, I've got a playlist called the Rotator Cuff Tear Health Playlist. There's a link to it in the description below. I've got a bunch of other videos on all kinds of other shoulder issues. You'll find a link to that in the description below as well. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and please share this with somebody you think needs to see this. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit our notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of the helpful videos that we post each and every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.